One of the biggest questions we can ask about this show is whether or not every person who enters Fromland sees the same tree or if it's different every time. And to answer this question, let's take a look at some of the scenes from the show. In the first couple of episodes, we saw how the Matthews ended up getting to the town. There was a funeral taking place and the Matthews knew they were lost because they couldn't get cell phone reception and they could not find the highway. The Matthews ended up looping around the road for a while until they got into the accident with Jade. But before all that happened, before they even got to Fromland, we saw something very interesting happening to them. After getting themselves lost, they wound up finding this fallen tree on the road. After investigating it for a bit, Ethan ended up climbing on top of the tree and then some crows showed up. After getting spooked by the crows and not seeing any way that they could go around the fallen tree, the Matthews just decided to turn back around and look for a different road to where they were going. This scene was unique for many reasons and of course raises many questions like what happens if someone simply jumps over the tree and keeps walking? Who knows? But seeing the fallen tree is the first sign that you're headed for Fromland. And to explain how we know this is the case, we have to go back to another scene that happens in the show. In episode 8, we ended up getting Boyd's backstory, and this had some big revelations about a lot of the characters we'd been seeing throughout the majority of the first season. We got answers for when Father Katri and Donna arrived in Fromland, and we found out what life was like before the talismans. And we also found out that just like the Matthews, Boyd and his family had also seen a fallen tree when they were first arriving into Fromland. More importantly, when we take a look at the two different trees, one of them has significantly more branches than the other. As far as whether these trees are two different species or the same one, I can't really tell, but the branches make it seem like they're two different trees that fell at two different times. But the mystery of these trees goes much farther than that. When Kenny talks to Jade in the first season, he reveals to Jade that everyone in the town was traveling on different roads and many were even on opposite sides of the country when they found themselves in this town. This is very interesting because it implies that there's some sort of teleportation that happens unknowingly to all the residents before they arrive in the town. Thanks to Victor and Boyd getting trapped in the dungeon, we know that faraway trees have the ability to teleport people, and that's why some people in the community theorize that the fallen tree or fallen trees that people see are in fact faraway trees that teleport them into Fromland. But if that is really the case, then I have to ask, do the trees fall by themselves or were they chopped down for the purpose of trapping these people specifically? There's some scenes in the show that might be able to give us an answer to that question, and one of them is Father Katri's backstory. In Katri's backstory, we learned perhaps one of the biggest revelations in the entire story. Katri explained that after he killed a man and was fleeing from the law, he had a voice talking to him that he thought was the voice of God. Being a man of devout faith, he obviously followed the voice's directions. But after doing that, he found himself trapped in Fromland. This makes it clear that there was someone or something that intentionally summoned him to this land. When Tabitha and Ethan were in the diner rummaging through the stored items by residents who had been killed in Fromland, Tabitha found something very interesting. A bracelet that she had made for Jim almost 2 decades ago that was obviously very surprising to her because Jim lost it the day Julie was born. It being in Fromland is highly suspicious and very, very interesting. When they first get to Colony House, Julie almost gets enticed by one of the monsters and she comes very close to getting killed by the thing. But what's crazy about this scene is that the monster knows her name. This is crazy because it's the very first night they've arrived in the town and it already knew who she was. Considering all these factors, it's obvious that these people in the town were chosen to come into Fromland by someone or something. The voice Katri had, Tabitha's bracelet, and them knowing their names even immediately after they arrive makes it obvious that these people were scouted before arrival, and the fallen tree was intentionally placed in their paths. When it comes to Jade, something worth remembering is that he was asleep before he got into Fromland, and because Sarah killed Toby, we have no idea if those two came across a fallen tree like supposedly everyone else does. While the characters believe they came across the same tree, there's clear visual differences between the two trees we have actually seen in the show, but because the townspeople can't go back to the tree after they're in Fromland, they can't verify whether or not two people actually saw the same tree. But you tell me, do you think the writers intend it to be the same tree? Based on what we've seen, it seems that the tree is different every time.